You're live.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 55th week of the Free Assange Vigil. Tonight, I am joined by my co hosts, Misty and Steve, and our special guest, Matt. But first, I did want to run through the dates with us. It is day 3,514 since the illegal and arbitrary detention of Julian Assange started inside the Ecuadorian embassy. It is day 467 since the WikiLeaks publisher was trafficked out of the Ecuadorian embassy and into Belmarsh prison following a $4.2 billion IMF loan to the nation of Ecuador. It is 54 days until the second phase of Julian Assange show trial and extraordinary rendition hearing. It is day 1,145 of incarceration for whistleblower Reality Winner. But in the good news, it is day 130 of freedom for Chelsea Manning. And I'm going to drop a link in chat here to Chelsea's Twitch. She has started streaming again, so I just recommend that everyone go over there and show her some love. But for those of you who are new or just coming back from being gone for a while, we are fundraising for Washington, D.C. Julian's trial starts the first full week in September, and we're going to be heading out there for the full 3 weeks. We're going to be there September 3rd through the 26th, so pretty much most of the month. And we're going to be the on-the-ground voice in support of Julian. We're working with multiple other groups to organize events with them and alongside of them, everything from stand-up comedy to in-person like teach-in events, kind of like live vigils, all the way down to street actions and street performances. So I really look forward to everyone joining us in DC. And if you can, please help us circulate that donation link. How are you doing?
And
today,
real
Steve
quick,
and Misty?
all of the super chats from Slow News Day are getting rolled into this GoFundMe. But because YouTube doesn't pay for like 2 or 3 months, it's gonna have to be like damn near right before we get on the plane. But so if you're regular viewer of Slow News Day and you occasionally super chat, that's where I'm putting the super chat funds, unless addressed otherwise specifically, say by Rob Juno, who wants to make sure that Josh has beer.
And hey, I also did just want to add to our dates that I think we're now on like day 3 of Reality Winner being positive for COVID-19. Maybe it's day 2. I'm not sure. So yeah, I just wanted that is now dealing with that of being, arbitrarily detained in some shithole prison.
So Matt, without any further ado, how are you today, my friend? Thank you very much for joining us.
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me, guys. And
Yeah,
thanks
absolutely.
for doing your, free Assange work. It's important. Not enough people.
Yeah.
Very true.
So I guess we can start out with this because Misty brought it up a little bit, talking about Reality Winner and her current situation. She was denied bail recently. She was trying to get, maybe it was house arrest, but basically a motion to allow her out of prison. Yeah, compassionate release. I couldn't think of the term. And that got denied amidst most of the U.S. prison population being infected with coronavirus, and now her coming down with coronavirus herself. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on her situation and just kind of the overall state of everything right now.
Well, as far as Reality Winner, I mean, I don't know if I can say anything new, but I agree with what I suspect everyone everyone here thinks, and that is, whistleblowers shouldn't be thrown in jail for sharing information that doesn't harm anyone, that's in the public's interest, and I also think people should be protected from COVID. So that's my thoughts on the Reality Winner situation. Sorry. I'm not as much of I'm more of a video editor than a wordsmith, but I am going to try. I'm going to try.
Those are good thoughts, Matt. Those are good thoughts.
The way that David McBride's case kind of mirrors that of both Reality Winner and Chelsea Manning it is pretty fascinating when you consider that this is, almost dragged out over the period of a decade. And the response that governments have to whistleblowers is both uniform and consistent in that David, Chelsea, and Reality all tried to go through proper channels at one point. All tried to make sure that they were doing their due diligence according to the military's own rules. And in each instance, they were rebuffed or ignored or dismissed and flat out told to shut up. And it left them no recourse but to go to the press. In Reality Winner's case, she chose to go to The Intercept, which I said before, burns sources like I do joints.
Mhm.
It is not where you want to take your documents that shine light on crimes of the government, particularly not Matthew Cole. That's Reality Winner was the third whistleblower attached to an article that he's written, who wound up incarcerated as a direct result of going to The Intercept. And then in David's case, he went to the Australian Broadcasting Company, not at all realizing or entirely unaware of the actual role of establishment media, not just in the US, not just in the UK, but Australia as well. And that office has since been raided. All of their computers were taken. They're now threatening jail time for the journalist that printed his story.
Which office was raided?
The Australian Broadcasting Company. It's
Okay.
called ABC. It gets a little confusing.
Yeah.
The federal police in Australia flat out raided the studio, took not just the reporter who wrote the article's computers, but everyone in that office. And and it's like, okay, so if you're the working out of the sports desk, and all you're trying to do is write an article about the number of teeth that flew out onto the field during a rugby match, or football, whatever. Now your computer is part of a federal investigation in Australia. It's just the way that they've run ramshot all over the basic privacy rights of individuals is it's cause for alarm, and it's one of the reasons that we're here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a whistleblower, but I am revealing tonight that I don't know that much about. I have not been, informed on the McBride thing. I have not read up on that. I should have caught your last interview.
Not a lot of people are. Not a lot of people are.
But it reminded me.
That's not.
I was going to say, it reminded me a little bit of the Snowden, when, at The Guardian, how the UK government just went in and destroyed their computers or their hard drives. I mean, it's just a reminder that as scary as things are in the US and seem to be getting worse in the US, prosecuting the first publisher, Assange, things are worse overseas, like frighteningly bad. Anyway, sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no, don't, please, no need to apologize. With David McBride's situation, just to kind of fill you in on a little bit more of the backstory, he essentially revealed the politicization of the Afghanistan war, and how basically certain deployments were happening solely and only because of political favors, and because they needed to have a reason for a re-election campaign to be successful and things like that, to where it was basically they were sending Australians in harm's way, potentially killing them knowingly, simply to bolster national morale about, oh, we need to be in these wars. Look at how successful we're doing.
As if that kind of backfires a little bit,
Oh, yeah.
Sending troops that get killed to boost the morale. That usually backfires. It's weird because that's a strategy that's been going on for as long as, history, it seems. Now, similar thing with the Pentagon Papers, right? In '71, Ellsberg revealed in the Pentagon Papers the reason, one of the main reasons was to avoid that we stayed in Vietnam was simply to avoid national embarrassment. That's
Right, like
crazy.
it's not nationally embarrassing to slaughter en masse women and children and burn houses and villages and drop napalm and Agent Orange and all the fun things we were doing. That's not a national embarrassment. No, going and occupying a country where the people who live there have a much better understanding of the way that the terrain is laid out and how to fight a ground war there. Yeah, that's embarrassing. It's there's a reason why I say frequently that we live in a fucking cartoon, and this is just one of them. It just kind of underscores all of that. Matt, you have done something that I believe everyone that is hosting the vigil tonight has, and that is run afoul of the Bernie Sanders I guess congregation is the way that I want to put that.
They don't like me.
I have this real quick, and then we can get into it. But I have this theory that that in an increasingly secular America, the same energy that people put into religion has now been transferred over into political identity, and to a degree, the science that you hear on the television, but much more so into political identity, and it causes people to react to information that it runs contradictory to their tenets of faith, causes them to react in the exact same way that showing a fundamentalist Christian a Christopher Hitchens book does. And they recoil and they retreat immediately back into only communicating with people who are inside their particular religious bubble, as for confirmation of biases.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. People are, traditional religion is declining, but yes, people are becoming more and more religious about other ideologies. Although I'll disagree. I don't know if science really counts as one of them. You said science on the TV. Maybe that's not actual science, but obviously science by definition is not a religion if you're doing it right. If you're not going off of beliefs. You can have a hypothesis, but you have to be able to be proven wrong. And that's the problem with religious thinking, right? You cannot be proven wrong. It's unfalsifiable, these beliefs. And so honestly, I'm not that have you had some experience with the Bernie crowd being super anti-Assange or something?
Oh, not so well. They just ignore Assange basically, but it's more of if you try.
Bernie did. That's true.
No. His supporters do too, mostly. Some of them don't. Some of them are very cool. Some of them, it's more if you criticize Bernie, they freak out. Some of them, it's not all of them. There are some who criticize Bernie themselves, and they're very open to hearing your criticisms as long as they're justified and valid. But a lot of them don't like it too much.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think. Yeah, it's not different from other politicians, like you said, or political ideologies, like you said, Steve. But I don't know. I honestly think, no, I'm totally biased because I was a Bernie supporter, and I think they're a little more open. At least, those in my network, at least the ones that haven't already unsubscribed, but are open to other ideas. And that's kind of what attracted them to Bernie in the first place. Because Bernie is more of a candidate that's open to conversation, open to discussing what's wrong with U.S. foreign policy, U.S. domestic policy. Whereas other politicians, they speak in more general terms, like, oh, things are bad, Wall Street is bad, but they're not really open to like specific discussions about it and how to improve situations.
In my experience, that holds mostly true until you run up against the national security state. And then Bernie himself almost always parrots the current, I guess.
Just be honest. He's an
thinking.
imperialist. He's an imperialist. He's had that's his record. It's not our fault. That's his record.
Yeah,
That's how it is.
yeah. We've got to vote against the Iraq War. And that's the thing. That's where he planted his flag. But there are so many other wars.
That
and
one bothers me
actions.
the most. That one alone bothers me the most because 2 times under Clinton, he voted for regime change in Iraq. But then under Bush, he votes against it and says he's the hero. So, I mean, it's just kind of the hypocrisy of that. I mean, there are plenty of votes throughout his record that prove his imperialism. It's uncomfortable for people who like Bernie to come to terms with, but that's reality. That's who he is.
I mean, yeah, no, it's true. I mean, the attractive thing about him was he did speak out against the war, predicted all the things that would go wrong. And yeah, and he deserves credit for that. But like you said, he did vote to stay, I think those 2 votes you're referring to were to support our troops in Iraq once they were there. And he did, of course, vote for the Afghanistan war like every other politician. So yeah, I mean, criticism is fair, but unfortunately, voting or speaking out strongly against the Iraq war before it took place, unfortunately, that's so rare. Like, he deserves a lot of credit for that. But yeah, he's not infallible, and he deserves criticism when he does things wrong.
So you recently made a video, you released it about an hour ago or so, about Julian and about censorship. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? And we can
Sure.
We have a little bit of it we could roll.
Unfortunately, it's a long video. Usually I do short clips, but the YouTube algorithms like in the long stuff, so we're going with that. But in a topic that's so rich, like the Assange case, longer videos are warranted. You guys know all about that. So in this latest video or interview with Thomas Drake, who was the whistleblower who went through the system to try and reveal NSA, the unconstitutional NSA surveillance state, warrantless surveillance after 9/11. Snowden obviously came out and did this, revealed it in 2013, but Drake did it many years earlier, or attempted to do it many years earlier, going up the proper chain of command. Funny, because everyone's saying Snowden should have just gone up the chain of command. Well, Thomas Drake proved that didn't work. That doesn't work, and he was punished terribly for it. He was threatened with 35 years in prison, the rest of his life in prison, and he lost. In the end, he did avoid prison. The government straight up tried to frame him by retroactively classifying unclassified documents that he eventually did go to the press with, because going through the system did not work. Anyway, so he avoided jail time, but he suffered. His career suffered, lost his career, lost all his life savings defending himself in court. So that's Thomas Drake. In my discussion with Thomas Drake, he did come out defending Assange, which is great to hear. Shouldn't be a surprise, obviously, but it's great, and because Tom is such a strong, important voice. But something interesting that came up is I asked him about him being censored in a conference at the end of 2019 in Australia. So just last October, he was censored in an Australian conference. I asked him about this, and he told me that I was the first person to bring this up with him directly. The first person, which is kind of scary.
Out of how many interviews or
just period. I don't know how many, but he's told me he spoke to the Washington Post. They didn't bring it up. He brought it up to them. They didn't report anything about it. So so they knew about it. They didn't know anything about it. And they didn't report anything about it. This is a huge story because what ultimately happened was he had scheduled this presentation at the conference. He was invited, scheduled it 8 months in advance. He shows up in Australia and he's told he's been canceled. His presentation's been canceled. And so was a Professor Soulette Dreyfus, who is a co-author. She co-authored Underground with Julian Assange. So Thomas was censored because of the Snowden connection, and Professor Dreyfus was censored because of the Assange connection. Who did the censorship? Where did it go up to? Well, it came out. The woman who now heads the Australian equivalent of the NSA came out and she admitted that she quashed it. She quashed them. She censored them. That's crazy. That's some serious censorship where you weren't, Tom and the professor weren't allowed to just address a conference of maybe 100 people. That's some really scary censorship shit right there. And then the fact that the media didn't cover it, it was covered in Australia media. It was covered in the UK's Guardian, but American media was completely silent. And it's just was really shocking and disturbing to hear. I mean, but maybe not surprising after all that, me with my dumb little YouTube channel, I was the first one to ask about him about it. I mean, scary stuff.
No, I get that fairly often from my show Slow News Day for whatever reason, and I have no idea why, to be perfectly honest with you, but I've managed to get some incredible guests. And I'll ask what I think is a pretty straightforward, basic question, and they're like, you're the first person to bring that up.
Jesus Christ.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a complete head scratcher, because that's something that you would think journalistic outlets would be on top of, and B, have a personal interest in learning the answer to.
Well, they have a personal interest in keeping their jobs and keeping their access to, to their intelligence sources. That's their real interest.
The problem. That's kind of when we talked to David McBride, and he said that none of the Australian media had talked to him at all, and like Steve's the only guy that's got in contact with him to talk to him. I'm like, wow. I mean, this is a huge story. This guy is whistleblowing on war crimes in Afghanistan, and nobody's talking to him but Steve Poikonen from Slow News Day. No offense, Steve. I mean, I love your show. I do, but that should be a huge story, and it's kind of crazy that nobody's talking about it.
I mean, that's the overall way the mainstream media even treats Julian's case, where instead of having people on there explaining what the fuck's actually happening, having people's hair on fire, saying this is literally the end of a free press for every single anchor that's on that show, on that channel, on that entire platform, that entire news network gets put at risk by Julian's prosecution, but yet none of them are screaming about it.
Yeah, it's crazy. We and Top and many others have pointed out how on paper, freaking Bob Woodward, Carl Bernstein, the famous Washington Post reporters for all the president's men for exposing President Nixon's corruption, they'd be in jail according to the indictment. Everything in it, except perhaps the 5-year max hacking charge. But of course, the other 17 of the 18 counts all pertain to obtaining and publishing national security information. Scary stuff. Oh, this is kind of fun. I looked up, just looking for examples, just make it so brutally clear the parallels between establishment journalists and Assange. Just how establishment, they're not at all safe. I just looked up Woodward sourcing. What I wanted to see some quotes about Woodward on a source, get where he gets his information, right? Since they are indicting Assange for basically just sourcing for his partly sources, obtaining the information. And I found a master class from Bob Woodward on journalism. And oh my God, there's just so much about sourcing and how you got, you always protect your source. Well, that's what Assange did. That's what they're part of what they're prosecuting it for. And it's just all about, secret information. It's like the most important information to get. The most dangerous thing is secret government. It's like, oh my God, why is this motherfucker not saying any of this publicly? Why do I got to find this in a 2018 masterclass? So needless to say, I'm making a video about that with these clips, and hopefully it shames the hell out of Woodward to finally say something publicly, because his, generation, they're the ones that are the most misinformed on this. The older generation that look up to people like Woodward and all, and they don't realize they need people like him to explain what's at stake, but he's not. Anyway.
Yeah, that is pretty depressing, actually. Somebody in the chat actually wanted to ask you about your Assange videos. They said that they're just as good as your Bernie videos, but obviously didn't get as much traction or go as viral, which is obviously because it's Julian Assange, and that's just how that works. But they're just, just curious on any of the feedback that you've gotten from your Assange videos. Like, have you heard from Assange supporters, or have you heard from anybody from Assange's camp? What kind of feedback have you gotten on those videos that you've done? Because you've done several. So
I have, yeah. Why haven't they gotten as popular? It's really weird because WikiLeaks looks pretty popular on Twitter, but man, they get hardly any engagement on their stuff. It's weird, very weird. But obviously, Bernie was super popular. But it does seem like the WikiLeaks stuff is getting suppressed. I don't know if it is on my channel. I can say it at least gets demonetized. And I have had sometimes people unsubscribe when I put that stuff up, but overall, it's mostly pretty positive stuff. And I'll say, well, Assange, his people, they haven't contacted me, but WikiLeaks did share one of my videos recently. So that was cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that is really cool.
And but the amazing thing, like I said, you look, they got 10 million followers or something, but their posts, they get hardly any. It's
kind of a third rail. I've noticed just in the time that I've been, kind of dealing with this, working with this. It's kind of a third rail issue. A lot of people just don't want to touch it. I don't know what that is. I don't know if obviously it's a lot to do with the decade-long smear campaign that they've turned him into. Larger than life monster figure who's, horrible to women, and he's, a narcissist, and he's an egomaniac, and he's, out to destroy the United States, and he works for Putin, and, whatever. So I think a lot of people are just afraid to speak out in defense of him. They're afraid they're going to get labeled, a rape apologist or a Putin buddy or whatever. And so I think that's a large part of the issue, is that and I mean, that's been intentional. It's been a decade-long mission for them to destroy this one man's character, and make it easier and more palatable to people to watch him be tortured to death.
Yeah, that's a great point. It doesn't really even have to be some conspiracy. It's just they smeared him, and they smeared him so hard, so bad that people really are afraid to even engage with WikiLeaks on Twitter online with a like or a share.
They're afraid to do it in the real world too. If you read that interview that Niels Melzer gave Republic, the first 3 paragraphs are about how he finally got brought on board with just looking into whether or not Julian had been tortured. And it was sort of ancillary that he dug into the investigation in Sweden. But he was, he was convinced. He was like, well, if this guy's being locked up, he must have done something, there's got to be some truth to what the official state response and state explanation for all of this is. And the more he dug into it, the more he found just how wrong he had been about all of it. And it's you have to be willing to admit that you were wrong, that you were lied to, that you may be a little bit more susceptible to propaganda or gullible than you thought you were. And like, there's a lot of personal ego breaking down that has to go through it, but before people who have been, not even on the fence, but just outright buying all of the propaganda. Like Sam Tripoli says fairly often, people are more interested in being right than doing right. And if your interests lie in being right, and the thing that you think you're being right about is built on a foundation of bullshit and lies, the unwinding that you have to do is almost too much for some people.
Yeah.
Totally. And just to give credit, the question that I asked, that was Daniel. We love Daniel, so I just want to give him credit for that before we move
Daniel's
forward.
the reason we have this interview, and Matt is a guest tonight.
I love Daniel.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel.
I want to actually give a special thanks to Kelly right now. He just texted me and said that he shared our stream on WikiLeaks' Facebook page. So I just want to give a big thank you to that as well. And for everybody just tuning in, we are hosting a live protest in DC for 3 weeks. It starts September 3rd is when we're getting there, and we're going to be there through the 26th. As we get a little bit closer, we'll have full event dates and times and the full schedule up. But I will put the link up in chat right now. If you guys can, please help us circulate it, because we're trying to raise about $10,000, and we're about 30 to 40% of the way there at this point to be able to secure housing, to be able to secure the actual items that we need for the protests themselves.
Yeah, so we have already put the deposit on our lodgings. So we've got about a month to come up with an additional like $2,700 to finish paying for just to have a place indoors to sleep in Washington D.C. for 3 weeks. It is
DC is expensive, y'all.
Daunting.
It's ridiculous.
And yeah, man, I understand that, like, 50 million people are unemployed, and that we have a, fascist, completely totalitarian government that doesn't give a sideways damn about whether or not you pay rent or you sleep indoors or your bills are paid. So we're not begrudging anyone if they're unable to donate. But that's why we're asking you to share the link, because the more that link proliferates, the better our odds are of being able to successfully crowdfund this trip. Josh hates dead air.
Sorry, sweet.
He yells at us.
He does yell.
But also, so for this week's action, because every week we try to get people engaged in different actions. There is an open letter that we discussed last Saturday, just in passing, because we were interviewing the lady who actually filed the complaint and got the letter put into Wise Up Action. So I'm going to put this link in chat, and if everybody could just sign the open letter and help circulate it, because it's basically pointing out all of the terrible things surrounding Judge Abernathy, and the fact that she has direct ties to military and intelligence members that have been called out by WikiLeaks, and she is still the magistrate presiding over Julian's case, even though she's not the judge on the bench. So if everybody could, I'd really like you to take this opportunity to go sign that open letter and circulate it across social media, so that way everyone can start understanding, I guess, a little bit better who these judges are that are ruling over Julian's case right now.
And nerd out a little bit. Go through and actually read the complaint. It is it's incredibly well put together, and you will learn something. I promise.
And just something that people can do that's super easy, especially leading up to the hearings, is just get louder. Tweet about it more. I follow, a lot of people, and I very rarely see anybody but myself and like you guys tweeting about Assange. And it's really troublesome to me, but I just tweet and tweet and tweet and tweet and make phone calls. I know Mrs. Assange is always telling us to make phone calls and, do what you can to, get a hold of your elected officials or whatever. I'm not sure what good that actually will do. But the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So if we're loud, they can't ignore us forever. So that's just a really easy and free thing you can do to help out, I guess.
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference. It does. And speak to yes, online activism, please help us out, but also just speak to your friends and family. That's huge.
So I wore a free Assange shirt I had to take my kid to the doctor. I wore a free Assange shirt to the doctor, and my kid's pediatrician asked me about it. And the whole time we were in there, I gave her a little bit of details, and she's like, oh, well, I'll go home and look into this a little bit. She had never really heard of it. I told her about, the doctors for Assange and all of that stuff. And maybe she'll sign the petition. Maybe she won't. I don't know. And I've done that before when I go to get my hair done, or when I went to my shrink. I spent it was right after he got hauled out of the embassy, though, so I was a little I was a little triggered. So I spent the whole hour talking to him, and he didn't really know, but he kind of knew, and he's a libertarian. So we've talked politics and stuff before, but it's just little conversations like that you can have in your everyday life with your neighbor or your sister or your cousin or your best friend or your boss or whoever. It would be.
It's a current event. It's current news. It's totally should be totally natural and normal.
Yes, and a lot of people are totally clueless, or what they know is bullshit. And so, if you can just have conversations with people, you can change people's minds. You really can.
One of the things too, and this, we have one of them queued up. We've talked about the other one before. In Australia, there is now a movement of city councils and mayors coming out in support of Julian. We've had the privilege of interviewing one of the mayors that tried to get Julian's name included in a motion for world.
She's a deputy mayor.
Mayor.
Yeah.
But across, I believe it started in Melbourne and then spread to multiple other cities throughout Australia, to literally just have their council release a statement in support of Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, and ending his trial. And then that just creates this at least local energy. It gets put into newspapers that aren't readily censored by big tech companies and things like that. But additionally, over in the UK, there was a motion put, they call it tabling, but it's not necessarily the same thing as if you table a motion in the US. But essentially what it is in the House of Commons, which is like their House of Representatives, a motion got put forward by Richard Bergen, basically in support of Julian Assange. It's in conjunction with the National Union of Journalists and the International Press Freedom groups, Reporters Without Borders, and as well as labor leaders such as like Jeremy Corbyn and things have now joined in on this as well. So I think it's something that's super, super important, because reaching out to local officials and federal officials may seem like it's just screaming into the void, but the one time that void ripples, you're making a difference and an impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I spoke to Thomas Drake, he said, he could only have so much. The deck was stacked against him in court, but he could have a real big impact on the court of public opinion, and that ultimately made a huge impact.
Well, and that's David McBride said something very similar. He said that when his case goes to trial, that he really needs people to show up to the courthouse, because if they see that you have public support, that makes a huge difference.
It does.
Yeah, it really does.
Because people forget, judges and juries, they're humans. They're humans. It has an effect on people. People going into determining the Assange case, people are a whole lot more likely, no matter how corrupt they are, they're a whole lot more likely to, send Assange to prison for life if they think that no one's going to have a problem with it. Yeah.
Well, and in Julian's case, and this is something that we've talked about before, but it's been a while. What this hearing would actually look like for him is Kafka-esque. We're talking about an entirely closed courtroom. We're talking about no one in the gallery. And we know all of this, by the way, because John Kiriakou went to court in the Eastern District of Virginia and experienced this firsthand, was able to relay it. But Julian's legal team won't even be allowed access to some of the material that the prosecution's using against him. The jury pool will be made up entirely of people who know someone in the intelligence community or are related to someone in the intelligence community. It's poisoned from the beginning in that sense. And then the jury will receive heavily redacted and altered transcripts from the hearing for each day when they go to deliberate. Because it's a national security case, they change the phraseology. So you might be reading a story about like bunny rabbits when in fact they're talking about the details of the collateral murder video, for example, or continuing the torture and war crimes. And they're going to be reading something entirely different and completely without context. So it's a horrific situation to walk into that Eastern District of Virginia courtroom and not be the judge or the prosecutor.
Well, and just the idea that like anybody would have the opinion that he would even get a chance at a free trial, regardless of where it's at. Look at how he's being treated now. The man is facing the United States government and hasn't seen his lawyers in 16 weeks. Hasn't
More
met
than
with
that now, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably 17, maybe a little bit longer. But that's insane. This is a huge court case, and it's so complex, and there's so many moving parts, and there's so much information to go through. He can't get a laptop. He's requested a laptop, and he still hasn't received that. It took him 6 months to get a damn radio. And he hasn't met with his lawyers in over 4 months. And I don't know how anybody could be expected to prepare their defense against the United States government without access to their lawyers. That's insanity. That's completely insane.
Yes, it is.
Sorry, I'm trying to put the Discord link into the chat, so I'm not going to be talking for a moment.
I don't want to get yelled at by.
We'll get yelled at by Sleepy Josh. Yeah.
I said something sleepy. Everybody else failed. But yeah, I don't know why anybody thinks that he would ever have a shot at a fair trial. It doesn't matter, what court he's in, where he's at. Where he's at now, he's not getting a fair trial. The fact that he's even still in prison, past the bail jumping, sentence that he got, which was already extreme, and they literally have, he's not being held for any reason. I remember when the COVID-19 first started and they were trying to get compassionate release for him, and they literally said out loud, we can't release him because he hasn't been charged with anything. And that's the most bass-ackward statement I think I've ever heard. It's ridiculous. Well, if he hasn't been charged with anything, it should be real easy to let him go. He shouldn't be there in the first place. It's stupid. So it's completely ridiculous. There's no way this ever find a fair and impartial judge or jury. It's not possible. It's just not.
The only way it is possible is if we inform everyone. Now, obviously, that's incredibly difficult, challenging thing to do, but in an attempt to leave some hope, that's how it's possible. Is if we inform people, and we're so everyone, let's keep informing people.
Well, so one of the fun things we're planning during those 3 weeks in DC is going to the Eastern District of Virginia and potentially passing out jury nullification information. maybe finding some specific locations where to engage with these people. But that's literally like the spook headquarter of the United States. So if anything, going there and just showing them that there is public support, and then hopefully educating a potential juror on what jury nullification is, and if it ever comes to the US, the power that one individual juror has to say, no, end this, like I'm nullifying this entire process. So that's one of the things that we can do to actually fight back, is knocking on doors and spreading information, and in some cases spreading it about, hey, this is some way, if you're put in this position, that you can take an action to fight back.
We need to get like matching Jehovah's Witness suits when we do that, and kind of pedal around like Alexandria.
It didn't happen. I need pictures of that. So,
hello, friend. Have you heard the good word about Julian Assange?
Seriously, I need pictures and video. Video would be great. But another action I thought of that's super easy and relatively cheap. You can buy like those for any like inkjet printer or whatever, like the little print your own stickers or labels or whatever. Make some and like go and stick, like when you go to the doctor's office and they have the little magazines on the stand, stick one on there. You know, like go around, stick them on little wherever you can stick them. It doesn't matter, like just anything, because a lot, like I said before, a lot of people just don't know. They have no idea what's going on. I mean, there's been times where I have talked to people who had never even heard of Julian Assange, didn't know who he was. Right. So there's a lack of information, and there's an overwhelming amount of misinformation. So yeah, any way you can think of to combat that is, you know, super helpful in any way.
Well, 10 years ago, this wouldn't have been able to happen. And that's why it's had to play out the way that it did, through just mass propaganda, like billions upon billions, if not more, in airtime spent slandering this person's name. And that's not counting what they actually pay the people to do the shows. And then that's the biggest thing that we have to combat, is the simple fact that people still watch the tube, that they'll still tune into these ridiculous mainstream media shows where they'll have people call Julian a high-tech terrorist and explain how everything he's done is a threat to national security and how he's harmed Americans and things like that. So it's, I don't know, it's trying to get to the people on an individual level, because a lot of them understand, like the majority, I would say, of people in this country know who Julian is and support, at least to some extent, what he had done as a publisher. But the fact that for the last decade, they've just drugged this man through the mud like he's fucking Britney Spears. It's just, that's why it's
really what it is too. If you ask somebody, do you support the exposure of war crimes? Almost across the board, people are going to say yes. But if you then say, do you support Julian Assange? It becomes a very different situation, because their mind has been infiltrated with this crap.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
This absolute garbage that they have. Seriously, this is going to be studied for, if humanity manages to survive. It'll be studied for decades. The propaganda campaign, the smear campaign that's been waged against this one person. The money, the time, the resources, the fact that there are multiple governments involved in it. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And well, people also just need to be reminded that this actually isn't a new thing. There's new tactics. I mean, they did the same thing to Daniel Ellsberg originally, and only recently, but now he's considered a hero, you know, but unfortunately we don't have the luxury of waiting, you know, a generation for Assange to, you know, people to see Assange for what he's actually done, and not some villain. Now that said, Ellsberg, yes, he's a hero now, and that's the one way everyone can see that's undisputable, is because he has a popular Hollywood movie starring Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep. That's how you know you've made it, and you know. So, what you said, Misty, about you know, people misinterpretation of Assange, it reminded me of an experience I had. I made a video of I actually live in the DC area, guys. And so, and I think I did when I was out interviewing people after they had seen the movie The Post. And one of these guys, he did work in intelligence. He made that clear. So I just asked the simple question. He's there with his wife, and just asked the simple question. So they told me Daniel Ellsberg's a hero because they just came out of The Post. I'm like, so if Daniel Ellsberg's a hero, why not Chelsea Manning in WikiLeaks? If Daniel Ellsberg's a hero for leaking to The Post, why not Chelsea Manning for going to WikiLeaks? And it made for some interesting conversation. And the funniest part was he literally said, in his mind, you finally see, like, he sees the ridiculousness of it, the hypocrisy of it, right? And he literally said, when I asked him why, he answered, because it's not Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep. Is that so? And actually, Assange did tweet that video out when he still had a Twitter account. Now that I recall, but I think he got like blocked from Twitter for something, and then he got blocked from the internet, and now he's in friggin' jail.
I think that's pretty cool. Going out and being able to get people's opinions like that. Taylor, one of our other co-hosts, and I, for a while we were going out to like Jimmy Dore events and Joe Rogan stand-up nights. That's actually where I met Misty in person. And
that's how I met Daniel.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it was a DC. Jimmy Dore was in DC, and I had Jimmy Dore and Daniel.
The way that I met Taylor and Andrew was right. It was right after Unity for J stopped doing their shows, and I was really bummed out about it. And so when I had seen on Twitter that somebody, I didn't know who they were, and I didn't know like what they were about, but I saw somebody was trying to like pick up the mantle and continue, and I was really excited. I told my husband, I'm like, I'm kind of antisocial. I'm really awkward in like social situations. I very rarely talk to people I don't know. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to go talk to this. They were handing out bracelets. I'm like, I'm going to go talk to those people. I'm going to get a bracelet. I'm going to find out what's going on. And I did. And I walked right up to Taylor, and I'm like, I need a bracelet, and I need to know how I can help you.
That's great. That's great.
How we met, at a Jimmy Dore show, standing outside in the street in Chicago.
Yeah, I randomly met Taylor at like a National Press Club event, and yeah, I mean she's great. She was asked some important questions, and it was just kind of weird. It was the first time I had tried like the whole like official route. Like usually I'm just kind of like a guerrilla media person, like on the street type of guy, on the street, and then in my own damn like home doing my video editing. But going to the National Press Club was interesting because by far the most you had the Washington Post reporters and others, a few others, but they were like hardly interested. It was almost like they were just like just on their phone, like just kind of just trying to get through the panel, and it was only real independent journalists like Taylor that were like really involved, and that was pretty, just to see that happening like in real life, like the actual
there was
reporters.
A woman that was on the panel for that, and you could watch her whole world kind of change while Taylor was talking. I remember watching the because Courage Foundation had live streamed it and then uploaded it, and as soon as Taylor was done talking, they're like, okay, well, we're not going to take any more questions, and like, we're going to go ahead and wrap now.
Well, what was one amazing part I remember about that panel, that event, is I unfortunately I don't recall the experts on the table. They said some intelligent things, but I don't know if they were as informed as the people here right now. In one moment in particular, they had to get corrected by just some activist in the audience about how that Assange didn't release, originally did not release all the State Department cables. It was a Guardian reporter who put the goddamn password, made the password public in his book. So that was kind of funny. You had the experts at the National Press Club getting that shit wrong. And that's a pretty serious fucking detail. Because the way they put it, Assange is the evil guy. In reality, it was an establishment Guardian reporter who did the careless thing. That supposedly, put lives at risk. No one was ever harmed, but anyway.
And following Julian finding out about the publication of that book, he contacted the State Department multiple times and got no response, and then spent basically 24 hours straight redacting information out of there. So that way, when it went to the general public, as much harmful information about innocent people, I guess would be the way to put it, was removed.
I got one. Sorry,
yeah, they have that on camera. No, they have that on camera. Him making that phone call to warn them.
Yeah, I think that was in
on. And they still that. It's crazy.
It's in that Laura Poitras movie, which unfortunately I think it kind of it took a different direction. It became a movie about Laura Poitras and Jacob Applebaum is what it became. But that's a great, I'm glad she documented that scene. That was interesting. I got one question in that National Press Club event. It wasn't on camera, but I just asked, I didn't even plan to make a video, so I didn't make a video, but what the heck, what's all this talk about potential harm? What exactly is it? I read the whole damn indictment and I'm just trying to figure out what exactly was it. And the panelist just looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, you should read the indictment. Just read the indictment. There's so many details. I'm like, I read the indictment. There's no, other than the, how it potentially harmed informants. Right. And she just like, well, after trying to shame me and say all you got to do is read the indictment. Then she was like, well, she's struggling to find examples. Well, there's a mention of war plans, just general, that's it. But what exactly, is the big danger? There's just no reference. And
here's the thing. You have I don't know if you did this or not, but you kind of have to be does the public have a right to know if our government is up to, unlimited amounts of shady shit, ostensibly in our name with our money? And if you can't, if you run into somebody who's well, no, we shouldn't know that, secrets are secrets, then you're done talking. There's just no reason to try and engage with that person, because they're going to revel in the fact that a journalist would get 175-year sentence.
Well, if you just point out to that person that Bob Woodward's going to jail, then you might get through to them. I don't know. There's ways to get, it's a challenge, but I don't know. I refuse to give up. I maybe it's because I like arguing. I don't know. Maybe you're probably making the wise decision to take a pass on some people, but I am all too happy to get into an argument.
Me and Alice, we give very good advice, but seldom often take it.
So when we were in DC the first time, Jason Burmis, I don't know if you know who that is. He's a good friend of the show and buddy of ours. He was with us there for the first couple of days in DC. And we were literally marching. There was probably about 20 to 30 of us marching from the White House to Trump Tower to the DOJ. And at one point, someone literally just walking by heckles us and yells, "Assange is a rapist." And so Jason Burmis, just already being live streaming, just hustles to catch up with this guy. He's like, hey, explain that to me. What evidence are you going off of? And the guy's like, and just freaks out because he's forced to answer a question about the propaganda that he's repeating.
You send me a link to that one, okay?
Talking point to regurgitate. I mean, it's really easy to just say, hey, this is what I heard on CNN. I'm going to repeat it. It's a lot harder to actually look into it and see what reality is.
Yes. And going on the street. Yeah. When you talk to people and just ask them like, but why, or where'd you hear that? Oh my God. Like I've had family members, like when I just brought up Assange, like, so what are you working on? I'm like, Assange. They're like, oh, the pedophile. Like, seriously. I swear to God. And I, needless to say, I informed them. I made an effort to inform them, because that's great. That just shows you how effective this shit is. Because even though that was how many years ago, that smear, which there's a couple really crazy details. I don't know if there was one very detailed article in McClatchy, right? That
start pretty quick. Like it didn't. I mean, yeah, a lot of people might have stuck with some people, but it was a week.
It obviously did. I'm telling you, people still think that. So
because if somebody hears something and they hear it on the news, it immediately sticks to them as truth.
And if it's something as extreme as that,
once or twice, then it's stuck in their head, and that's it, and that's just what they think, and it's really hard to combat against that once they have that belief.
Even though that statement, that allegation was immediately retracted by CNN after one of their pundits said that on television. I mean, that whole operation to try and frame him as a pedophile, it's really interesting, crazy operation. Like I said, like McClatchy did some good reporting on that. Really freaky stuff. I mean, it really seems like a CIA operation, a serious intelligence operation, whoever it was. Anyway, I wish I could recommend the article, but I don't have the title. Anyway.
Well, attacking people with that kind of angle, like with the sexual abuse, rape angle, is something that the intelligence community does through and through, over and over against people.
Because it's a really easy thing to make stick, because nobody wants to question a victim. Nobody, believe women, and especially with kids. I mean, my God, if you call somebody a pedophile, that's a pretty heavy statement to make, and it's a really hard one to fight back against.
Yeah, and who can forget that such an extreme statement? That
immediately brings out the rage in any normal human being. If you hear that a child is being abused, it's like rage. Oh, yeah. It's pure rage, at least for me. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's just me, and that's the worst. And so I think that using that is a very it's a very specific tactic. They know what they're doing.
Let's all go everyone take a turn. So we got pedophile. Now, what are the other worst things you could say about anybody that Assange has been called? Go ahead. Or I'll go next. Terrorist, fucking
rapist.
Terrorist.
Yeah, rapist, pedophile.
These are the worst things you could say about anybody. These are the worst things you could say about that's what they've done.
Yeah, and responsible for putting our troops in harm's way.
Yeah.
Potential murderer as a result of that.
My favorite is when they call him a traitor. I'm like, y'all know he's not American, right?
Yeah.
He's Australian. It's okay.
God.
That's a big one. People always seem to forget. I think we talked about this last week. It's mind-blowing to me that an Australian journalist with dual citizenship through Ecuador, sitting in an Ecuadorian embassy in London, can be yanked out by London cops on the behest of the American government when he's not American. His publication isn't American. It's never been an American organization. And yet somehow we have the authority to prosecute him. And then they say that, First Amendment protections don't apply to him. So our rules apply, but our rights don't. That's very convenient for us, isn't it? It's ridiculous. And it's terrifying, because what that means is the United States government can go after anybody, anywhere, in any country, anytime you say something that they don't like. And that should terrify everybody,
including the United States itself.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
And other thing too, on an international stage, this clears the way for the prosecution of journalists internationally. right?
Mhm.
So if there's someone in Singapore that is from Madagascar that reports on the crimes of China, the Chinese government can just snag them up. If someone in Haiti reports on Saudi Arabia, they'll just snag them up, because internationally that is an acceptable practice at that point if it's allowed to go through the extradition process.
Yeah.
Well, and let's be clear, because I've found myself lapsing a little bit and referring to it as an extradition on accident. This is not an extradition. This is a slow-moving broad daylight kidnapping. This is an extraordinary rendition. This is a what we will see in September is the culmination of a decade's worth of erosion on the rule of law, on the way that states are supposed to operate per their marketing versus the way that states actually operate, and will underscore that we do not have governments that run intelligence agencies. We have intelligence agencies that run governments. When I pause dramatically like that, that's when people jump in to talk.
Sorry,
I just got a notification from Josh or somebody. Maybe it's not Josh, but maybe it's just the app. It goes, your microphone appears to be noisy. So Josh, is this true?
Yeah, I think
it'll occasionally do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you're fine. I think.
All right.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm an audio guy myself, so I get paranoid about this stuff.
I got
so
that.
help me out, Josh. Help me out. Make me sound good.
Loud,
so it doesn't have the same level of noise cancellation that, like, let's say Zoom does. So it can pick up, like, if I have my headphones too loud, the microphone on my camera can pick it up.
So are you guys getting that same message?
No.
Occasionally. Not
Okay.
this evening.
You're fine, dude.
The big issue today, we got to free Assange and we got to fix my microphone. No. Yeah.
No, I did want to ask you though, because I watch your videos. Your videos are great. I love your videos, but I don't know much about you. Like how did you get into making videos? How did you get into activism? How did you decide to kind of go that route with your, video editing and like, how did you sort of get to this, like where you are now?
Well, the way I got into video is kind of interesting story. So in high school, I ended up with some knee injury, and I was at a boarding school. I was put in a boarding school. So I'm living in school, which is not a good situation for anybody that doesn't like school. And one teacher had this this project he's doing. He was working on a video about the school's community service. I'm stuck with the freaking. I can't even play sports. I can't do anything, right? And I'm in the middle of school, stuck in school. Anyway, so I'm like, I can't even say no. I'm like, dude, I'm dying here. Yeah, I guess I'll look into this. And he just gives me or lends me his laptop and the little camcorder. Gives me like a super quick Final Cut or iMovie lesson, right? And I just fucking took off, and I for the first time I found myself enjoying myself in school. Like I was at a study hall, and I'm just like fucking, and I just caught myself like, oh my god, I'm having fun, and I'm in school. But anyway, this community service project. What was interesting. Basically, I had been influenced by Michael Moore. I'll admit. I was on like a Rage Against the Machine website, and I saw an ad for Bowling for Columbine. I saw it, and I thought it was cool.
That was a really well done movie.
Yeah, I thought so too. And anyway, so I kind of played as if I tried to find like a controversy with the school's community service, right? And there's one scene where I'm interviewing the headmaster. I'm like, so what do you do for this community service? And he was just so taken off guard. because he had nothing to say, right? Everybody's required to do community service, but except the headmaster's not. He hasn't done anything, but he gives this totally bullshit answer anyway. It just seemed like it was just like a fun project. But the amazing thing is, the headmaster ordered the teacher who was doing this project to, well, it was in front of the whole school. So we had, but the headmaster hated it so much he ordered the teacher to delete it. I'm not kidding. And the teacher who had like approved this project, that had put me on this project and approved the screening of it. So the teacher had to write an apology to like the whole school for screening my video, and he almost got fired. He told me, and he was ordered, he was told to delete it. He gave me the VHS, the last cop, the final cop that it was, was not supposed to exist. It's not a good movie, guys. It's not. I know it's my first fucking thing.
What exactly did you put in this fucking thing, Matt Orfalea?
Look, that's the thing. That's the thing is, Josh, we need some laughter from Andrew. I want to hear some laughter from Andrew. That helps. That makes you look.
Sorry, I was muted.
I was muted too. I was muted. Sorry.
Anyway,
they like fucking nuns in this thing or something? Like, Jesus.
Well, the headmaster was a priest, and obviously he had a huge fucking ego because he couldn't handle the most basic. I didn't even overtly criticize him. I just asked him the question, and he embarrassed himself because he had nothing to say, and he tried to anyway. And
that's a wonderful story.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
So I was like, yeah. Oh my God, it's coming back to me now. Oh my God. This is why I have the audio paranoia, because that was the worst thing about the fucking video is like I played in the theaters like, oh my God, nobody can even hear this shit. Nobody can even hear this shit.
Matt, we just triggered Matt, you guys.
Triggering that's a problem. That's a problem. Yeah. But anyway, so that showed me the power of film, and it also showed me that there's something you could do, study, work on, and then other than it just showed me that video is a fucking thing. I didn't even know editing was a goddamn thing. You go and maybe this is new. I hope this is new for people. I think it is new. People, but back then, like video editing wasn't a common thing. It wasn't. It just wasn't. It was new. That you'd had apps built in on computers that could do this video editing. I didn't even know video editing existed. Anyway, so discovering video editing basically, changed my life positively, I think. That's
I think at least something good came out of the boarding school.
Yes. It's funny. The one thing that was when I tell people like, oh yeah, actually, no, there was no classes, and I had no classes in high school. It was a total fluke that I discovered this.
It's impressive, and thank you very much for doing it. We've been getting.
Yeah.
We actually are going to do a private group of it tonight, but we're working on putting more teach-ins together. We released our first one about 8 weeks or so ago.
It was almost 3 months ago.
3 months ago, and it basically summing up what had happened up to 2016, essentially, with Julian's situation and everything that was going on. Our next one that we're going to be putting out encapsulates, basically pivots to look at Chelsea Manning's situation during the period following when she revealed the war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan and the Guantanamo Bay folders and all those kinds of things. So that's almost done, ready to release. So we're super, super excited about getting that out. That should be probably no longer than another week or two.
Cool.
Okay, just so you guys know, Kimber's in the chat and she's like, it's been 2 months, so chill. Just so you know. And also, Anthony wants to know, what does Matt think the best way to get any message out, as he seems to be an expert in that? Look at that, Matt, you're an expert.
Well, I mean, however, whatever works for you. I mean, if you've heard me stumble and, pause like, like maybe public speaking is clearly not my best way to do this. Right. So I edit myself in video. Do whatever works for you. If you're just cool talking with people on the street, do it. If you're a writer, write, just post some blogs. If you're just a tweeter, do some tweeting. I mean, it's really just that simple. Whatever you're comfortable doing, whatever your gifts are, just use them.
That's the best thing about activism. And I think I've talked about this on this show before, that it literally anybody can join in. You can, any small act can make a difference. So it doesn't matter if you're, you know, super busy and you've never really done anything. You've never been to a protest. You have no idea what you're doing. But if you send out a tweet about an issue that matters to you, that can make an impact. So, I mean, just anything you can do is really all that anybody could ask. I mean, that's it.
And we've mentioned it, but I'll mention it again, because just talking to your friends and family is huge.
Absolutely.
Just normal conversations. Anyway, yeah.
Because, well, the thing we advocate for is the idea of just decentralized activism, that there doesn't need to be a huge national organization with thousands and millions of dollars in resources. There needs to be people. And people just need to go out and spread the message whatever way they find most comfortable, whether it's through door knocking, postering, putting yellow ribbons on trees, hosting an event. Me and Taylor took cake out to a 4th of July event because Julian's birthday was the 3rd of July. So just any little thing makes you literally a unique actor unto the universe around you. And it makes an impact beyond what you even realize you being there does. So whether you're going to, I don't know if people even get together in crowds anymore, but a public place, pass out flyers or have conversations, or go door to door, talk to your neighbors and say, hey, here's some information about Julian.
Absolutely. And Matt, Beth in the chat. Hi, Beth. We love you. She wants to know if, since you're in the DC area, if you are going to be able to join the guys and the crew in DC. I would like to try to make it, but I'm old and have kids and it's hard. My husband works an ass ton of hours. So I'm going to try. We'll see what I can pull off. But yeah, Beth wants to know if you're going to be able to make it to any of the events that they're going to be holding.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I think my gift, I think, is video editing, but I'm happy to get out and interact with people in real life too. So yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah, all the bodies, the more bodies, the better when you're protesting, for sure.
Unfortunately, yeah. It sucks. This coronavirus thing sucks so much.
Yeah, it really does.
Say that was a pretty dark coronavirus joke, Misty.
We have seen though.
The more bodies, the better.
We've seen that like social distance protests can go off without a hitch. Saw it in Israel, of all fucking places.
Yeah, right? That is a very funny thing about this, right? Like, as soon as as you go out on the street protesting, like that's okay. So hey, I guess we'll just follow that logic with the Assange, with this
Well, I guess they're saying the outside is not as bad as if you're in like an enclosed space. So, I mean, I guess as long as you're wearing a mask and you're attempting to social distance as much as possible, they've got thousands of people in the street in Portland. I mean, is it an ideal situation? No, but is it an important thing to do? Absolutely.
Because honestly, I've wanted to make a video, like an on the street video, just interviewing people about this. But only now are people like, are the streets kind of like busier again, sidewalks and streets? So yeah, maybe. So it can be done now. So there are people to speak to now if you come to DC.
Well, and here's the thing that we always try to get across, especially when we're talking about other direct actions that are happening right now, is that no matter what it is you advocate for, what you advocate for depends on a free press in order for you to get your message out. It depends on not being so algorithmically censored on Twitter that the only people that you talk to are the people who already think the way that you think. And if you're not advocating for Julian as a part of your activism, no matter what your activism is, you're missing a very key component. Mm-hmm. And that is the precedent that will be set if Julian Assange goes to court in the Eastern District of Virginia, where literal kangaroos would be more impartial and better suited to try that case than the judge and jury that are currently there.
Yeah, and
I always tell people it's not about Julian. It's not about Julian. It's so much bigger than that. I mean, is Julian's life worth fighting for? Absolutely. Are you kidding? Of course. But it's so much bigger than that. This is and I know it sounds dramatic, but this really is like a turning point for humanity. We're going to go one way or the other, and it's not going to be good if global fascism's been on the rise for a while now, and one of the first things that fascists like to do is control the media. And they've already been doing that. I mean, all of our mainstream media outlets are owned by the same people. It's all controlled. It's all state controlled. And so, this is like our last grasp at having a legitimately free press and for real free speech. And if it goes away, it's going to be hell to get it back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already going to be hell just to preserve it, honestly. Like,
yes.
It's been hell, yes.
And that's why I think this situation is so pivotal, because not only is it the fight for a free press, it's the fight for a prison system that can't use process as punishment. It's the fight for a whistleblower to be able to come forward and provide this information to the public through a safe means. But it ultimately comes down to, it's the fight for human rights. It's the fight for, if they can publicly do it to Julian Assange, regardless of what you believe in him, if they can scoop him up, drop him in this hellhole publicly, and drag him through it in this way, it's just a matter of time before it's you or me or any person that may have a differing opinion than someone in power. Because it doesn't have to be that you're revealing war crimes. Once a fascist system, once totalitarianism takes over, revealing the crime of your neighbor could get you killed.
Yes, and just to get, the totalitarian nature, like just so people know how totalitarian things are getting. I mean, people watching probably already know, but just a reminder. The government has your search histories. I mean, they can literally without a warrant. Wait, let's see. Maybe they need a warrant at this point. Hopefully, they do, maybe they don't. But I really wish I had reread that new vote on the Wyden amendment, right? The proposed Wyden amendment that unfortunately Bernie Sanders voted against. But anyway, so if the government's got all this information on you and you can't know anything about the government, that's a very, very abusive. That's the system. That's an incredibly abusive, unfair, dangerous system. And just think about how many people are getting their lives completely ruined for information, for just fucking social media, okay? Just for public information, just from social media. Now think about, and if you're looking at these stories critically, that many of these instances, not all of them, but many of them are really blown out of proportion, and people are suffering major consequences for little flubs from decades ago. Now, think about how much more fucking information we've all got privately that the government's got on servers or can get on servers like that.
And all the information we don't have about ourselves, all of the phones that have broken years ago that they have copies of that we don't.
Sure. All the information about us. There's way more information about each of us that the Silicon Valley companies have, that we don't even know about ourselves, which is very creepy, scary stuff. But yes, all of that. It's way more information that they have that they can easily just frame in a way that screws over anybody. That is an enormous amount of power, and it needs to be kept in check. And the only way to keep it in check is if we can see what the hell they're doing, so that they have to be public with their information too.
Yeah, I don't know, an unofficial motto really of cypherpunks is privacy for the weak, transparency for the powerful. And that doesn't mean that you or I or Andrew or Misty are weak people. It just means we do not have positions of perceived or real authority in this country. We are more or less at the whims of this fascistic blend of corporation and state, coupled with a sort of like almost Stalinist state capitalist economy and a surveillance.
What a fucking combo.
Right?
What a fucking combo.
Right?
Stalinist, state capitalist. Holy
And-
fuck. We'll
and
take the
the
worst of
kicker
both,
is-
please.
We've got a fucking national surveillance apparatus that would make the Stasi be like, fuck, I didn't know you could do that.
Yep. It's pretty amazing.
It is. So when we talk about privacy for the weak and transparency for the powerful, or privacy for the individual and transparency for the powerful, that's the power structure in the Five Eyes countries specifically. It is just this weird, like, neo-feudalism, I guess, but there's competing factions within that structure, where we've got oligarch versus oligarch. So check it out. The Onion. I'm going to jump fucking tracks here real quick, but it will tie together, I promise. This is fairly typical if you're not familiar with the show. But back in early aughts, The Onion put out an anthology called Our Dumb Century. And they had this article, it must have been 2003 or 2004, because the article was a picture of Osama bin Laden and a picture of George W. Bush. And it said, billionaire scions play out personal dispute on global stage. And even though The Onion wasn't like, oh, and by the way, Osama bin Laden worked for the CIA and was trained and funded by the CIA, and was even featured in the New York Times as a freedom fighter in, I believe, 1984 or 1983. They didn't go into that, but they captured perfectly what we see when we've got the global war on terrorism, or our ever expanding adventurism in Africa and South America. And we are literally watching and losing countless numbers of innocent civilians to some global billionaires playing their fucking disputes out all over the fucking planet in blood, in coin. It is so when you're up against that, dude, you gotta be loud, I think.
You mentioned the Stasi, and I just wanted to make a movie recommendation. I mean, I suppose, have you guys seen The Lives of Others? Have you seen it?
I have not, but I'm gonna write it down.
The Lives of Others.
I don't think I have.
Oh my god. Okay.
But I'm terrible at remembering titles.
So I just saw it recently, but it's an old movie. Might have been around 2007 or something. And if you want to know where we're headed, or where we very well be headed, you gotta see this movie. It's just a fucking great movie. I think it won Best Foreign Film in 2007. And okay, there you go. So that's what you want to see, the Soviet police state.
So we were talking about.
In addition to all the action for Assange videos. Sorry, go ahead, Missy. Okay, all right.
No, you're okay. You're okay. You're fine. You're fine. But I was just like, while you guys were talking, I was frantically looking for this tweet and I know I mentioned Caitlin Johnstone so much, but it's because I love her. So she tweeted out a couple days ago, the amount of power you have over other people should have an exactly inverse relationship to your right to privacy. The more power you have, the less secrecy you should be entitled to. Once your power reaches governmental level, that secrecy should be zero. And that's fucking it right there. When you have power over people, the lives of other people, you are no longer entitled to secrecy. That's it. Like that's it. If you take on that job, you should be taking on that job understanding that everything's out in the open. That's the way it should be. And that's the only way that it can, that we can actually have a functioning democracy. And I mean, listen, if my government's committing war crimes in my name, I want to know about it. I'm entitled to know about it. And there's no, either you're on the side of war criminals or you're on the side of the people exposing the war criminals. And I hate like kind of that black and white, but that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, you can have a democracy without transparency, but it's not functioning, like Misty said, because you want an informed. You need to be an informed democracy to be functioning correctly. You get if you don't know what the hell is going on, what your own government's doing, how can you make an informed, decision on votes, on policy, on anything else? I mean, anything government related. How could you?
Well, you can't, Matt, and that's why what we do here. And what Action for Assange is a post-partisan organization that wants to drag people into a post-partisan reality where the only thing that we really need to agree on is that we need a free flow of information, and we need to be able to access primary source documents and primary source testimony about whatever it is our government is up to. And if our government is in bed with a number of corporations, then we need to be able to access material on those corporations as well. Because if we don't have this free flow of information, we can't even begin to discuss policy.
Yes, and it's more than, I mean, all the war material gets most of the attention, understandably. It's war. That gets the eyeballs, those headlines. But at the same time, they don't report enough on war, like we're saying. But I wanted to bring up the Congressional research reports. Did you guys hear about this? This is one of the earlier Assange or WikiLeaks publications, and it is cited actually they don't I don't know if they cite what Assange is referring to. They just quote him in the indictment saying something to the effect of, we found a vulnerability in some government computer or whatever. And so they include that in the indictment, in the general section of the indictment, to frame him as a hacker, as a bad guy hacker. But are you guys familiar with the story, the Congressional research reports? Because this here, so that's what it's in the indictment. They're citing, they're mentioning this story, but they don't mention what he's actually referring to, which is fucking hilarious when you actually know the context. So the story, what he's actually referring to, Assange, and he's talking to a 2009 hacking conference. So yes, when people think hacking, some do think bad, but let me tell you what the context now, after I've teased this for like already 5 minutes more than necessary. So the the information he was referring to was Congressional Research Service reports. So this is basically Congress's research department. They do all the research for Congress, and it's not publicly available. Public taxpayers, tax money pays for it, but this research is not publicly available. Or at least it wasn't at the time. So what Assange did is he published all these Congressional research reports. What's incredible about this is this was not a national security threat, even though it's in a goddamn indictment that's, trying to put him in jail for revealing national security information as evidence of that as a bad person. This is information that people benefit from. That's public information, doesn't put anybody in harm. And fucking John McCain had been arguing for this to be made public for years. And so had Joe Lieberman. These are the most establishment motherfuckers have been like, this information should be public. And who fucking did it? Who fucking made it public? Julian Assange made it public. And even after he published it, what were these politicians saying? Well, fucking John McCain and Joe Lieberman. Here, let me give you a quote. This is after Assange did. They weren't like, chain this motherfucker up. No. Senator Joe Lieberman said, our constituents deserve widespread public access to these reports and their taxpayer dollars pay for. And so they're trying to make it so after Assange put it out, they're like, now they didn't cite Assange as a hero, but how can you, he's obviously in sync with common fucking sense that even establishment politicians can't disagree with it. Even they're in line. John McCain said, I've been working to provide online availability for congressional documents for over 10 years and improved access to the expert research materials produced by the Congressional Research Service will provide greater transparency into the congressional decision-making process. $107 million of taxpayers' money will go to fund CRS's operations in 2009. The American public paid for these valuable resources and has the right to benefit from them. Okay? Now, he never thanked Assange. Maybe he fucking should have. But this is what they said after the release. It's pretty fucking amazing. And the fucking DOJ has the gall to cite this shit as evidence of how he's this evil motherfucking hacker. So that's the fucking context.
Well, they also have the gall to use a convicted pedophile who the FBI paid to infiltrate and fuck over WikiLeaks, who was convicted on embezzlement as well and certified a sociopath. They've got that guy as one of their star witnesses, and their other star witness is Hector Monsignor Sabu, who was the rat that got everyone in LulzSec hemmed up. The Jeremy Hammond is still in jail because of what the FBI did. It's a fair point to make that Sabu had already been compromised before a single hack took place that LulzSec claimed responsibility for. Now that means that the FBI hacked Sony and the FBI hacked Stratfor. In fact, Stratfor's files were on FBI servers within 48 hours of that hack. All of them. Every single tiny little piece of data that was released in the global intelligence files was on the FBI servers way before WikiLeaks published it. So that's who we're dealing with.
Yeah.
We're dealing with Mike Pompeo. Now, Whitney Webb was on my show a couple of weeks ago, and Henry Kissinger came up, and she referred to Henry Kissinger as a gigantic blob of satanic jello. I believe that the same phrase can be applied to Mike Pompeo. And when Vivian Westwood was in the birdcage today, there was a sign there. After that, they left and they went to where Pompeo was, because Pompeo was in London today. So if you don't know what happened, we did stream it earlier. It went out on, I believe, all of our platforms. But Vivian Westwood had this 10-foot birdcage that she put herself in front of number 10 Downing. And then they went to wherever the hell Pompeo was, and there was a sign there. And it said Mike Pompeo is a gigantic blob of satanic jello. And it had Pompeo's face inside a jello mold.
No way.
I'll try and find it here real quick.
That's great.
That's amazing.
That was Allison. That was Allison who did that.
Yeah, Allison Mason McGee.
I don't remember her last name, honestly.
I'm looking for it. might take a minute, but
She's got like
amazing.
1, 2, 3, 4 in her username, if I remember.
That's cool that was out there, though.
I'm just going through my notifications.
No, you're fine. So Matt, I think that you should you should do a video with the crew. Like you should help them like do a video and like collaborate. That would be awesome.
I may do that. I may just do that.
That would be dope. Yeah. I mean, we need all hands on deck at this point. Things are getting intense.
Good idea.
I hate this. Yeah, the fucking coronavirus, motherfucking coronavirus. But we're gonna deal with it. We're gonna deal with it.
So I hope that Mike Pompeo gets a chance to find out that it was us that started the rumor that he's a giant blob of Satan. Well, Steve, more in particularly, started the rumor.
Way to go.
Right? So I hope that he's like, that's bullshit, and then puts fucking one of his cronies figuring out where that came from. So that would
that would be awesome.
Since I'm sure we have Kevin with us tonight.
I'm going to take responsibility.
Here it is. Where'd it go? God damn it. There it is. Can you see that? Or did I fuck this up?
You fucked it up.
Okay. Well, I'll take 2.
There may be a random allow window somewhere that you have to find, Steve.
And it's Allison Mason.
There we go.
Giant satanic blob of jello.
Nice.
I like it. That's
Oh
perfect.
god, it's the green jello. That's even worse.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, Steve, I like your response. It's beautiful. It is beautiful.
So,
that's perfect.
Thank you, Allison Mason.
Yes. That's
and Whitney
amazing.
Webb. Don't forget to thank Whitney for that one.
And thank you, Whitney Webb.
We need that on a
God
shirt.
damn it. Where did Jitsi go? Oh.
It's hiding on you.
Need some shirts with that on it.
Did I hit the stuck in? I'm doing great tonight.
You're doing fine, Steve.
We do it live.
God damn it. Where'd you go?
Could be worse, dude. Your power could go out. That happened last time I tried to Steve.
So
it did. I'm fucking.
There you are.
Are you lost now?
Now you're back.
I can still hear you. I think you're good.
I
Yeah,
can
but
see you,
anyways,
Steve.
what Vivian Westwood did was awesome because if nothing else, the spectacle alone just calls attention to it. So
yeah,
and
awesome.
as a little that was not in front of 10 Downing Street. That was where Pompeo was. She was in front of the Old Bailey.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Because that's where the hearing is going to be.
And as far as symbolic places to try to put someone to jail in association with Anonymous, the Old Bailey is probably one of the most dangerous symbolic places that they could pick. Just because of the V for Vendetta overtures that exist within the Anonymous community. It's literally them saying, "Hey, we're taking you down, and this building still stands."
Dude, they used to have a restaurant there back in the day, years and years ago, and they'd do public executions out in front of it, and they'd be eating their dinner watching it. So that place is just evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very symbolic for sure. Okay, so what else did we not touch on?
Okay, so there was there was a question in the chat about where is Jeremy Hammond incarcerated. He
I did see that, yeah.
Incarcerated in the Grady County Jail, which is in Chickasaw, Oklahoma. And I'm going to, in the chat, drop how to write to him if you would like to do so.
That's
because I follow the Free Jeremy Hammond page, and I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen any tweets from them, so I wonder if Twitter unfollowed them for me. I bet. Cool. Yeah, I'll write him this week too. And you guys write to Julian. Write to Julian.
Yeah,
and
if you go to Action for Assange's website, we have a whole thing on what the do's and don'ts and how you go
the
about
rules of engagement. Yeah, and follow David McBride. He, when we interviewed him last week, he said that even just words of encouragement mean so much to him. So I can imagine it's pretty daunting for him right now, kind of being at the beginning of this process and facing, you know, court proceedings and all of that and everything that comes with it. So, I mean, even just knowing that he has support, I think, is really significant for him right now. And he's such a nice and lovely man. So, yeah, everybody, we got to reach out and support all of them as much as we can.
So we are approaching on that 2-hour mark, and we take a long time to say goodbye. So I want to start by saying thank you for joining us, Matt. And if you could let people know your final thoughts, where they can find you, and other general information that you find important right now.
Well, my final thoughts are thank you very much, Andrew, Steve, and Misty, for inviting me and for speaking with me. It's nice to actually talk with people that I agree with, you know, verbally. You don't get to do, I haven't got to do that too much these days with the coronavirus. And the fact that I'm a motherfucking video editor, you know, we don't see that too much daylight, unfortunately. But so yeah, final thoughts. I mean, well, and again, and also thanks for doing the McBride story. I'm definitely gonna look into him now. So that's great. You definitely informed me, educated me a little bit. Oh, and well, yeah, you guys can find me youtube.com/orf, ORF. Twitter is 0RF. I kind of fucked myself saying that, but people, you know, anyway. But if you're listening, then you won't fuck it up, and you can find me. So yeah, I'm on Facebook, but fucking that place is going to hell. Minds.com. Do you guys use Minds.com? What do you think of that?
I have an account. I am really not active. Drufus, who is in our chat, who is also Jason Burmis's moderator. Okay. Drufus has a Minds account, and he said that he does get traction with the Assange stuff. But to what extent, I don't know. I have an account. I've posted one thing. I've had the account for 2 years. I posted once, and it was from an interview I did in May with John McAfee. But the reason I have a Minds account, I think, is because Elizabeth Voss was like, "Hey, you should have a Minds account.
Follow me on Minds."
No, I think what happened was there's one of the great
Facebook purge. Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's
and
that's
everybody joined Minds, and so I joined Minds. I made an account. I don't understand it. I don't know how it works. People keep trying to get me to jump on there, and I just haven't. That's all it is.
Yeah. I like the whole, you know, anti-censorship thing. So hopefully they keep that up. It's nice to know they exist, so that when we all do get purged.
Have you connected with Rockfin yet?
I was gonna say, man, that's why we're on the Rockfin.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Rockfin.
It is a cryptocurrency-based streaming platform. So, like, the average person just hops in there. They can pay $10 a month, and it's like being it's like a Netflix subscription, except for like thought-provoking content creators, essentially. And then the creator gets like some kind of cryptocurrency generation, Ethereum, right? Yeah. From people's viewership, from their membership on the site, and a bunch of other ways. So it's a pretty cool, from what other creators I know that are using it, actually make a decent little amount of money off of it. So might be worth looking into.
That does sound like a good idea, at the very least. Hopefully it's successful. I might have to check that out. I do.
Jimmy Dore actually just moved on to it.
Whoa.
Yeah, he was the first big like breakaway, and he's putting his patron content on Rockfin as well. Yeah. Huh. So hopefully there'll be some other big podcast players that break off and go over there.
Cool. That's great news. Hopeful news.
Hopeful.
Cool.
But my name's Andrew Smith. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew Zigman. You can find this on Twitter at action_4Assange, and actionforassange.com. And I just want to thank Matt again for joining us, Misty and Steve for doing this alongside me, and Sleepy Josh and Kimber for all their behind the scenes work, as well as everybody in the audience for watching us. So thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say, first of all, that I love that every time Andrew says his goodbye thing, he says, if you want to find this, and he does like this great jazz hand thing. It's my favorite. I love it so much. But yeah, I'm Misty. Matt, thank you for coming on. It was really cool to get to meet you and talk to you. I've been a fan of your videos for a long time, so it was cool to be able to chat with you for a while. But you can find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. We have like a little baby YouTube channel. My friend Jesse Zerowell and I, it's called Facts on the Ground. We're like super new, like nerdy, trying to figure it out, total noob sauce. But yeah, you guys can check that out. We actually tried to interview Steve the other day, had serious technical difficulties and a power outage. So we're going to try that again this week, and hopefully that'll be up soon. So you guys can check that out. And I think that's it. Did I forget anything? I don't think so.
You forgot to say fuck you, Skype.
Oh, yes. Fuck you, Skype. Oh, and I love Putin.
My name is Steve Floykin, and I host a show called Slow News Day. You can find it on YouTube by typing in Slow News Day Podcast. I am on the Rockfin and D Live and hopefully more platforms soon. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. I'm speaking directly to the chat right now. The people who watch us live every week, you guys are incredible. Thank you, Beth, for the super chat. That was incredibly generous. Mana Talk super chatted as well, wanting to know where Kim.com is. He's in New Zealand. He's active on Twitter.
He's crushing it at Destiny 2.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, so I think I got the super chats that I saw. And yeah, thank you, Matt. This has been fantastic. You're a wonderful human being who does really incredible videos. Really talented, man. I have a lot of respect for your work. Thank you to Andrew or Jazz Andrew. And Misty, Sleepy Josh on them ones and twos, and me and Panda for the graphic work. We will see you on Saturday. I don't really know who's going to be on Saturday, but I can tell you right fucking now that David Rovix will be on the vigil next Tuesday, and I'm really looking forward to that. If you're not hip to David Rovix, you should give it a shot. YouTube the guy, does some wonderful work. He's got a song for Julian called Behind These Prison Walls, and the video is recorded in front of Belmarsh. Good stuff. Yeah, and so yeah, until next time, good luck to us all.